She was just a young girl, running an ordinary errand on a quiet summer afternoon. The store was only a few minutes from home. A soda, a chocolate bar. That's all she set out to buy. But Christy Wesselman never made it back. As dawn broke over Glen Ellen, Illinois, police officers traced a narrow footpath through wild, overgrown grass between a suburban neighborhood and the local convenience store. The air was thick, heavy with the secrets of the previous night. Somewhere in that tangled field, they found what no one in this peaceful town ever expected to see. The lifeless body of a teenage girl, discovered just a few feet off the path, so close, yet so heartbreakingly hidden. Despite the area's proximity to homes and busy streets, nobody had heard or seen anything out of the ordinary as the day turned to dusk. The scene itself raised more questions than answers. The coroner would later count 8 wounds. There were unmistakable signs of a violent assault. Yet, the evidence seemed to stop there. Forensics collected a biological sample believed to belong to the perpetrator, a silent, invisible witness waiting for the science to catch up. But there were no clear footprints, no obvious clues left behind at the scene. The killer had vanished, as if swallowed by the night. How could something so brutal happen, so close to home, with no one noticing a thing? In a town that prided itself on safety, the discovery sent shockwaves through every family, every parent who'd ever let a child walk to the store alone. And as detectives began their work, one fact was painfully clear. Nothing in Glen Ellen would ever be quite the same again. To truly understand the shock that rippled through Glen Ellen, Illinois, we have to look at who Christy Wesselman was. Not just a name in a headline, but a vibrant life cut short. Born April 19, 1970, Christy was the heart of her family and a shining light at her school. Energetic and outgoing, she was the type of girl everyone knew. As vice president of her class, she balanced academics with a passion for sports, excelling at both volleyball and softball. Christy's friends describe her as kind, spirited, always ready with a smile or a quick joke to lighten the mood. She was a daughter who made her mother proud, a teammate others looked up to, and a friend who never hesitated to lend a hand. The summer of 1985 was supposed to be just another chapter in Christy's story. She was attending extra classes, making plans with friends, enjoying the simple pleasures of a small, close-knit town. Glen Ellen itself was seen as one of the safest places in the region, a place where doors were left unlocked and parents didn't worry when kids rode their bikes at dusk. On July 21st, Christy came home from her summer class around 3:30 in the afternoon. It was a routine day. Nothing seemed out of place. When her mother asked her to walk to the nearby store for a quick errand, no one thought twice. It was a trip she'd made countless times before, just a few minutes there and back. But that ordinary decision would become the last time anyone saw Christy alive. The innocence of the neighborhood would never be the same, and for one family, the world would be forever changed. On the surface, everything about that summer day in Glen Ellen felt safe, ordinary, even idyllic. There were no dramatic arguments, no looming threats in Christy's life. By all accounts, she was a well-liked teenager with no enemies, no personal feuds, no troubled relationships at home or at school. So how could something like this happen, in a town that seemed almost immune to tragedy? But as investigators began piecing together the events, certain subtle warning signs began to emerge. There was no obvious motive, no jealous friend or disgruntled classmate. Yet, a single detail at the scene stood out: the ring. Christy had left home that day wearing a distinctive pearl ring, a favorite piece of jewelry. When her body was found, the ring was missing. Had the killer taken it as a souvenir? Was it meant to be a twisted trophy? A chilling reminder of what he'd done? Another risk factor quietly haunted the investigation: the layout of the neighborhood itself. Children often took a shortcut across a vacant lot, an overgrown field of tall grass that separated the cluster of homes from the convenience store. It was a well-worn path, known to locals, but almost invisible to passing traffic. In this stretch of wild, neglected land, someone with bad intentions could easily wait unseen. That shortcut, meant to save time, had unwittingly created an ideal setting for a predator. And yet, the community had grown accustomed to this shortcut. Parents trusted their children's routines. Nobody thought twice about safety in broad daylight. But now, those routines were shattered. The question lingered in every parent's mind. Had they all overlooked something? Had the comfort of daily life blinded them to the possibility of danger lurking so close to home? In the aftermath, what once seemed perfectly safe now felt suddenly fragile. One missing ring, one unguarded path. One ordinary day turned unspeakably tragic. July 21st, 1985, began like any other summer Sunday in Glen Ellyn. Christy Wesselman returned home from her summer class around 3:30 in the afternoon, a bit tired but cheerful. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The air was heavy with the warmth of July, the hum of lawnmowers and distant voices drifting across the neighborhood. Christy's mother asked her to run a simple errand, just a quick walk to the store for some soda and a chocolate bar. Around 4 p.m., Christy entered the familiar corner store, a place where she was known, her presence routine and unremarkable. The store clerk, a friend of the family, remembers her smile, her relaxed mood as she paid for her treats. No one noticed anything out of place as she left. It should have been a safe, uneventful journey home. As afternoon faded into evening, concern began to creep in. Christy wasn't back. Her mother called her friends, hoping she'd stop to chat or play, but none had seen her that day. Worry mounting, Christy's family started searching the route she would have taken, from home, across the shortcut in the tall grass, to the store and back again. They walked the neighborhood, calling her name, hoping for an answer that never came. At 1:50 a.m., when hope gave way to dread, Christy's mother called the police. By dawn, officers and neighbors joined the search. One officer suggested retracing the shortcut through the overgrown field. There, hidden just a few meters off the path, they found Christy's body. A grim discovery that ended the night's anxious waiting in an instant. What made the tragedy even more chilling was the quiet that surrounded it. Just yards from where Christy was found, a family had held a barbecue, unaware of anything amiss. The gas station nearby bustled with business. No one heard a scream. No one saw a struggle. In that brief window of an ordinary afternoon, something unspeakable had happened and gone unnoticed by everyone. The hours and days after Christy Wesselman's body was discovered saw Glen Ellyn transformed from a peaceful suburb into the nerve center of a desperate investigation. Police canvassed the area, searching for anyone who might have seen or heard something, anything, out of the ordinary. Yet the responses all sounded the same. The store clerk had been the last known person to see Christy alive, confirming she left the shop with her purchase, her demeanor unchanged. A handful of others remembered glimpsing her at the store, but none could say which way she'd headed next. No one along the footpath or in the nearby houses reported seeing a struggle. Even those celebrating at a backyard barbecue only yards away noticed nothing. The gas station, just 60 yards from the scene, remained busy throughout the afternoon and evening. Not a single customer or employee recalled witnessing anything strange. It was as if the crime had happened in another world, silent, invisible. As investigators combed the scene, they focused on what little physical evidence they had. The crime was brutal. 8 stab wounds, unmistakable evidence of an assault. Forensics carefully collected a biological sample left by the perpetrator, rare for the time, as DNA testing was still in its infancy in 1985. The missing pearl ring stood out, a possible trophy taken by the killer. But beyond these details, there were no footprints, no weapon, no clear fingerprints, no obvious clues to point to a suspect. Detectives developed theories. Had someone followed Christy from the store, or had the killer been waiting, hidden in the tall grass, for the right moment? Could it have been someone she knew, someone she wouldn't suspect, explaining the lack of any cry for help? They questioned every man in the area with a criminal record, conducted interviews, and even considered those with the slightest connection to the Wesselman family. In the years that followed, dozens of DNA samples would be collected and tested, all with no match. The case, already shrouded in mystery, was becoming colder by the day. Each false lead was another blow to a family and a community desperate for answers. For years, the case of Christy Wesselman's murder haunted both her family and the Glen Ellen community. Investigators followed every lead, tracked down rumors, and collected DNA from anyone who even remotely matched the profile. Each test ended in disappointment. The killer remained a phantom, unseen, unknown, untouched by justice. Hope faded with every passing year. But as time wore on, science caught up with the evidence. The DNA sample, carefully preserved since 1985, became the silent witness that never forgot. In 2000, Christie's case file was uploaded into the FBI's expanding national DNA database. Still, there was no immediate match. The killer's identity remained locked away, the answer just out of reach. Then, in 2015, everything changed. Out of the blue, a hit came back from the system. The DNA profile from Christie's crime scene matched Michael Jones, a 62-year-old man living in Champaign, nearly 150 miles from Glen Ellen. The twist? Jones had never been on the investigators' radar. He had no known connection to Christy, her family, or the neighborhood. His DNA was only in the database because of a much more recent crime, a domestic violence arrest in Illinois, where, by law, suspects were now required to submit DNA samples. Jones had a history of violence, stretching back decades. But he was a drifter of sorts, known for traveling alone on his motorcycle, passing through towns and rarely staying long. The evidence suggested he may have simply been passing through Glen Ellen on that summer day in 1985. The random, senseless nature of the crime made it all the more chilling. All those years, Jones had evaded suspicion simply because he was a ghost in the landscape, not a known threat. The DNA match was the break investigators had waited 3 decades to find. Finally, after 30 years, Christie's family had a name and the first real hope of justice. When Michael Jones's name finally surfaced in connection with Christy Wesselman's murder, the wheels of justice began turning after decades of waiting. For Christy's family, it was the moment they'd clung to for 30 long years. But the legal battle that followed was anything but simple. Jones's criminal past was damning. Records revealed a disturbing pattern. Attacks against women dating all the way back to the 1970s. He'd served a sentence of 10 to 20 years for violent offenses, but was released early in 1983. Over the years, He'd continued to display warning signs, restraining orders in 1994, an arrest in 1999, yet always managed to slip through the cracks. Jones had moved around frequently, often traveling alone on his motorcycle, drifting from place to place, never staying long enough to draw suspicion. On September 18, 2015, the state charged Jones with the murder of Christy Wesselman. After so many years, the community braced itself for the trial, hungry for closure but bracing for old wounds to reopen. In 2018, court proceedings began. The prosecution built its case around the irrefutable DNA evidence and Jones's violent history. They sought a life sentence, determined that Jones would never again see freedom. But Jones, facing overwhelming proof and the possibility of spending the rest of his days behind bars, accepted a plea deal. He pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. The court handed down an 80-year prison term, a sentence so severe that, by law, Jones would not be eligible for parole until 2095, far beyond his natural lifespan. For Christy's loved ones, the verdict brought a mixture of relief and sorrow. There was finally an answer, finally a name. Yet nothing could erase the pain of those lost decades or return what had been taken. Still, in that moment, justice, however delayed, was finally served. With Michael Jones behind bars, the Wesselman family could finally begin to mourn in earnest. 30 years had passed since Christy's life was stolen, and with each year, hope had grown fainter. The long-awaited arrest and conviction closed a chapter of unimaginable pain, but it also opened up new questions about justice, community, and the hidden costs of a system struggling to keep up. Christy's mother spoke out publicly after the sentencing. She made it clear, if Jones had not been released early from his prior sentence in 1983, her daughter might still be alive. It was a devastating reminder of the far-reaching consequences of decisions made far from the victims and their families. For many, Christy's case became a sobering lesson in the dangers of early release and the need for accountability, not just for the guilty, but for the institutions meant to protect the innocent. But the aftermath also highlighted another tragedy, the damage caused by misdirected suspicion. Dana Henry, a local man, was thrust into the spotlight during the initial investigation after he refused to provide a DNA sample. Though he was later exonerated when he did comply, the public suspicion had already destroyed his reputation and his life. No official apology ever came. It was a harsh lesson about the ethical responsibilities of both law enforcement and the media. A reminder that justice must be pursued with care, not recklessness. Perhaps the most profound legacy of Christy's case is the power of science to break through silence and time. The Illinois DNA law, passed in 2002 with the help of the same prosecutors involved in her case, led directly to the breakthrough in 2015. The importance of a strong forensic infrastructure and national databases became undeniable, tools that could and would solve cases once thought hopeless. Christy's story reminds us, respect for the victim must always come first. And while the path to justice can be long and winding, truth, when it finally arrives, is a light that can never be fully extinguished. The murder of Christy Wesselman shattered the peace of Glen Ellen and haunted her loved ones for 3 decades. What began as an ordinary summer day, a quick walk to the store, ended in tragedy, and for years, the case seemed impossible to solve. False leads, forensic dead ends, and even ruined lives marked the long search for answers. But in the end, it was science and relentless determination that brought Christy's killer to justice. Her story is a sobering reminder of the fragile line between safety and danger, the devastating cost of mistakes, and the undeniable power of truth. If Christy's story moved you, help us honor her memory and support victims' families by sharing this episode, leaving a like, and subscribing for more in-depth investigations. Together, we can keep their stories alive and push for change that truly matters. Like, follow, and hit the bell to join our community of true crime seekers. And never miss another unsolved mystery.